Welcome to the Millennial and a Boomer Walk into a Coffee Bar podcast.
The very best podcast to get your life advice in the form of a grande caramel macchiato in a venti cup, 1/3 whole milk, 1/3 almond milk, 1/3 soy milk, double the amount of vanilla syrup, caramel wall in the cup, no caramel drizzle on top, upside down, of course, tall ice cup, whipped cream, rounded lid, one shot extra espresso, decaf, cinnamon sprinkled on the top, and for the name, that's David, spelled Dafydd, please.
Or to get your business, finance, and life support black coffee advice, I'm Dan, I'm a Boomer.
And I'm Chase, the Millennial. Thanks for joining us today.
Well, time is really flying. We're back again already, and we're talking money. And I won't sing this time, but if you've been following the podcast, the BAM podcast, we've been talking about money and expenses and budgeting, and we're going to dig in. How do you get started? I'm just shocked at how many people in today's society think it's okay to be in debt. Credit card debt and other things. So
Yeah, culture says it's fine. That's not a problem.
Right.
Why would that be weird?
right, and it's just not. And you'll have a much better experience in life and be in control of the whole thing. And believe it or not, you'll be able to have more stuff if you budget appropriately.
Yeah.
And it will be the stuff you need or the stuff you want, and it will be prioritized. So we've been talking a lot about the financial terms. We're gonna jump right into how do you create a budget? Let's get started and let's make it happen, right?
Yeah.
That's where we're at on this one.
Well, we actually had a review from some of the previous episodes, and I wanted to read it before we get into the budget.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very good.
So this one is from a listener. The title is called Great Info and Funny. Surprised it doesn't say, and looks aren't everything. No. It says, this is a great podcast. Love it. Quote, only hold meetings when absolutely necessary. Interesting conversation on facilitators too. I enjoy the millennial and boomer perspectives.
Oh, see, we're getting it out that just because it's different doesn't mean it's wrong. You guys think way different than a lot of the boomers do, and it's not wrong, right?
Yeah.
And so, great. That was a good feedback. I like that one.
And I want to encourage you, if you're listening and you want to help support us, we're not asking you for money, but we are asking, if you don't mind, give us a like, a comment, or a review on Apple Podcasts. Hugely helpful. Takes you only 30 seconds, but it helps us get the word out and get the algorithms to suggest us to other people looking for similar things. So let's dive in today. We are going to continue with finances, and just by way of recap, it all started based on the 3 mistakes your boomer parents made that are keeping you in debt, an article that I very happily sent to my father, the boomer. And it talks about a couple of different things, and we provided the stats around those in, I guess, 3 episodes ago.
Right.
And then the next episode after that, we talked about understanding financial proficiency, where we dig into basic financial concepts. It's really the starting point of this entire conversation and our thoughts around finances. And then we started last week's episode on Let's Talk Budget. Sometimes a 4-letter word to some of you, but nonetheless, really figuring out what the terms are. You've got to understand the terms before you can create a budget. And so we went through all the terms. And then today, we are going to start with starting a budget. So now that I have the background info, how do I actually do this crazy thing?
Well, I'm going to say this and jump right in. Today is the first day of the rest of your life. If you really, really want to take control of your future, start a budget. And so we're going to talk to you exactly how to do that. Now, I'll say this. A budget is something that you have to be able to look at and frequently refer to. It can't be something you do and put in a closet and then come back in the end of the month or the year. Something that you have that you can look at and that you can refer to frequently. Now, as a boomer, quintessential boomer, I tell you what, give me a paper, give me a pencil, give me a checkbook register. I went into our bank and said, hey, I need some more checkbook registers. And it was a millennial, and she looked at me all glossy-eyed, and I said, yeah, I'd like to have a couple of them on hand. Can you give me more than one? And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I'm like, the thing that you budget or you balance your checkbook with, it has income and deposits and withdrawals and all that. And she said, let me get my manager. I'm not kidding you. And so I walked away with a handful of them. But anyway, a paper, pencil, a checkbook register, a red and black pen, and I'm good. Now, I'm not outdated enough to think that Excel couldn't help me, because I'm getting a little bit more proficient in Excel, and I could transfer over to that. But the budgeting method of choice is just that paper, pencil, black and red pen.
And for those of you beginning, I would encourage you to go this route first.
Wow.
I know, as the millennial, because I'm about to tell you what millennials use, and it's not a piece of paper and a pencil. That's not where we're going. However, if you don't have any idea how to do this, I think for a month you should do it, just so you have the idea of it.
I like that, because you can see it, you can touch it, you can change it, you can modify it, you can use an eraser. The back end of what this thing is on a pencil, it can undo. This is your undo button, right? Right here.
Control Z?
Control.
I thought that was the booger picker. Oh, man. Yeah, no, millennials, we don't like paper and pencil. But what do we like? Well, I would consider myself an Excel aficionado. More than just putting a couple numbers in, I think that there's some value to running different formulas. That's not where you start. If you don't understand the basics, you don't start with formulas. Start with the basics.
Yeah.
And then you can add in things like pivot tables and VLOOKUPs and all these other things over time. What I would encourage you to do is, you say, Chase, the paper pencil thing is just a step too far. I'll tell you what we use. And it's not a paper and pencil. We use apps. And there are these really smart people that are much smarter than me and can create something on your phone that is basically the same thing as what you're doing on your piece of paper over there, but they do it in an app. And we use, I was going to pull it up and show you. We're recording on that. Let me just pull it up here. So what we use is an app. It's called Every Dollar. Every Dollar.
Every dollar.
And remember last week we talked about having an every dollar budget. We've got to make sure that every dollar is taken care of.
Exactly true.
And so it starts with, here's a general idea, and we're going to get into some of the percentages and things here in a minute. But it allows you 3 different views. The first view is building a budget. These are the 3 that are across the top of the screen. Build your budget. How much money should go into this item? The second is how much, let me think about this for a second. Stephanie does this part of it, so I'm not as well versed. The second part is how much I think comes over from the previous month. And then the third is how much do you have left? And so that's where I live, is where in the budget are we at this point in time in the month?
Okay.
And so really building out your budget, that first viewpoint is the most important part. I would encourage you to check this out, because there's this really satisfying little green check mark, or red X, I think. And when you have money left to budget, or if you're over budget, when you're setting it up, it's just obnoxious. But as soon as you get that to $0, it has this little animation and it turns to a green check mark and it says, congratulations, you have an every dollar budget.
Praise the Lord. So let me just kind of wrap this part up. A boomer, and whether you're a paper and a pencil kind of guy with a checkbook register, or you're a millennial with a spreadsheet, pivot table, charts and graphs, colors, fonts, apps, bell whistles, triggers, what we both can agree on when you're working on your budget is to have the accessory. And that's a cup of coffee.
There we go.
There you go. So we're rocking and rolling now on our budget, and where we're going to go is to look at what categories you have to have. And you have your income, that, right? But you can subdivide your expenses into needs and wants. And then your savings, and then, as you say, place how much you have in each bucket, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you're not budgeting right now. Maybe you are, but let's say you're a first-time budgeter. You don't know what you have in each one of those. So really what you need to do is actually have a method to go create a budget to see the current state.
I think that's someone backing up a big truck outside. I don't know if you can hear that on the recording, but we're looking at all the devices. What's beeping in here?
She's gonna blow. But no, it's the guy across the street backing up. Beep, 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 beep. So, but anyway, so one of the easy ways to do to at least get you started is the 50-30-20 rule. And that's kind of the suggested budgeting guideline that gives you an allocation of how much you should spend on each one of these things. So do you want to break it down what the 50-30-20 rule is that will help you get started? And listen to this because it's going to get you started.
Yep. All right, this is the suggested budgeting guideline, not a hard and fast rule. And it says 50% or half of your income should go towards necessities. These are things like your rent or mortgage, groceries, utilities, the things you have to have in order to continue living life.
Right.
Okay, 50%. 30% of that then goes towards your discretionary spending. Things like hobbies, entertainment, the extras, those all fit here.
Travel.
Oh yeah, travel, yeah.
That's a big one too.
And then 20%, the last 20%, while not last, but it's last in my list here, is savings. So 20%. And I know there's some people out there like, I can't save 20%. I'll bet some of you are saving more than you think when we break down what savings means. And then there are some of you who you're probably not saving any in any of the areas that we're going to talk about. So we'll fix that.
But these are good, fast rules as a suggestion to start your budget. So really go through here and go through your checkbook register on what you're expensing or your app, whatever your bank says. And hey, you put them in these these buckets, right? And you create your budget by comparing your income against the spending. And your spending is 50% on necessities, 30% on hobbies, travel, entertainment, and 20% to savings.
I'm going to change your word though. You have the word comparing, and I don't think we want to compare. We want to tell our money where to go. We talked about that last time. A budget is forecasting or forward thinking of where my money is going to go. Comparing is really looking at it in reverse and saying, where did my money go? Okay. And let me figure out where that went. So a budget, the idea is we are going to figure out today where my money will go over the next 30 days, as opposed to at the end of the month, where did my money go over the last 30 days?
Right.
Big difference.
A balanced budget allows you to certainly cover your needs, but it also will provide an avenue for a comfortable living. You're in control. Don't not spend money on things. We're not asking you to go sit in your house with the lights off, but have a comfortable living and then save for future expenses, future retirement, things like that. So this is a good way. So step one we're going to do, and we're going to actually walk you through on creating a budget. Step one.
Well, know your income.
Right.
Get a pencil, get a paper out. You're going to want to write some of these things down. The first is know your income. And this is calculated from several different ways or methods or areas where money is coming in. So income is all the money that is returned or given to you. And we say that way because it could be returned to you through an investment.
Yeah.
It could be given to you by your employer. It could be given to you by the old lady across the street who you mow her grass. The point is your income is all of those pieces added together gives you your total income. And if you're like, hey, I really don't have any other income but from my job, I'll bet there's more in there that you're not thinking about. However, take how much you bring home. Now, if I make $100,000 a year, I don't write down my income, $100,000, and divide by 12, because that's not my take-home income. There's a lot of stuff that's coming out. FICA is taking a good chunk of it. Your insurance is taking a chunk of it. Hopefully your retirement is taking some of that. And so we're talking about your income, how much is coming into your bank account every month.
Right, that you can be for spending. So,
and that's called your net income.
Net income. And know what that is. Don't think, don't guess. Actually know what that is. Now, I'm going to touch on a couple of crazy things here. I'm walking down the street. I see a coin on the floor. I pick it up.
A penny saved is a
penny earned.
There you go.
I was actually on vacation, and looky here, I saw a Canadian nickel. Now, most people would think, hey, that's 5 cents more than what I had before I started that journey. Now, and there's another thing. There's rebates. That could be income. You buy a product, and they say, you buy my product, I'll give you $5 back. I apply for every one of them. That's $5 more than what I had. And so think of that and make sure that you total that up. Don't be totally overboard with it, but just think about the sources of income and know what that income is. So calculate your needs budget. Remember, you've got your income. Calculate your needs budget by timesing it by 0.5.
All right, well, hold on. That step 1 is know your income. Step 2 is now calculating your needs budget and doing that by 0.5 times your income. Explain what that means.
So if you have, we'll just use really easy numbers here. You have an income of $100 a month. 0.5 times 100 is 50. Therefore, your needs budget is $50. It's pretty straightforward. You take your known income and times it by 0.5, and that's your needs budget. Now remember, needs are rent, utilities, food, transportation, insurance, and basic clothing. Those are the needs types of things that you have to have.
All right, so we're gonna call out the boomer way of doing this math. What we're trying to get at is the 50% of your income to your necessities. I think
50-30-20 rule.
Yeah, 50-30-20. I think, and I know why you did this, but I think most millennials would look at this and they'd say, all right, if I make $100, I need to divide it by 2. And you're multiplying it by 0.5. Yeah, same result, different way of getting there.
Okay,
I know why you did it though, because of the next 2 steps. But
let me rename this tool for millennials. It's the 1/2, the 3/10, and the 2/10 rule.
1/5. Come on, we're gonna get down to the.
Okay, 50%, 30%, 20. You times it by 0.5, divide it by 2.
So now we know that $50 of our $100 has to cover rent, utilities, food, transportation, insurance, and basic clothing.
Right.
Exactly. And there are additional steps once we have that, because you might get to this step and say, I spend $70 on those items.
Well, wait a minute. We're just setting up the budget here. We're not doing the analysis yet.
All right, we'll get there.
I think you're jumping to the analysis part of it.
We'll get there. Okay, so that's 0.5 times your income gets your needs budget. Step 3 then becomes
calculate your like to have. Hey, this is what I want. I want a cell phone. Hey, I want a new set of clothes that aren't for warmth or purposes. You know, the hobbies, the entertainment, the eating out, the shopping, the travel, the things that you like to have that give you a pleasant life. You should be able to spend that out. So you've got your total income, you've got your must-haves, which is half of your income. Now you take your total income and multiply that by 0.3, 30%, to get your budget for your like-to-have items.
So this is giving you your bucket. This is how much you can spend on these areas.
Correct. We're setting up the budget. We're not doing the evaluation of how much you've spent yet.
Okay.
We're just setting up the budget. So now you got your income. You got 50% of that is going towards must-haves. You got 30% going to that. And it's a good hard number. It's a fast number that you've done. And then step 4 is a very, very important step. It's to
calculate your savings budget. And this is taking your income number, 100, timesing that by 0.2 to get 20%. And that's the money that you're going to set aside for your future goals. What areas are included there? Well, your emergency fund, first and foremost.
Dave Ramsey.
Oh, Dave Ramsey fans. Hey-o! Emergency fund. Number 2, setting aside for your retirement account. I know there's probably people when we talked about it up front, wait, there's no retirement included. Yeah, no, that's part of your 20%. And then saving for college for yourself and or your children. And then any other big purchases you're saving for. So your savings budget, 20% covers emergency fund, retirement account, college fund, and any other big purchases you're saving for.
Right. You know, I even was following how much should I save for retirement, and there's a kind of a rule of thumb, 14%, 14% that you save right now, which kind of makes sense and it fits within this. We're saying 20% savings. You don't want it all to be for retirement because you have to have a rainy day. You have to be able to go buy unique things and for future purchases that you have a goal for. So take your full income, multiply it by 0.2, get 20%. That is your savings budget.
Well, there's a step 5 that we have here.
Yeah.
All right.
There's a step 6 too.
Oh my goodness, I haven't scrolled down far enough. Let's do step 5 first.
This is the big one. Write down your current state spending. So now, 1 through 4 was creating the budget. You know exactly 50, 30, 20, and how much you're going to do. Now, this is where the rubber hits the road. Go through your bank statement, go through your online statement, and take a look at that banking app and see where each one of these monies that you have spent in a current state, today's environment, where it went. So for example, if you have a monthly house payment or you have an apartment payment, boom, that goes in your must-have needs budget. Okay, so you've got that and that's an actual amount. But as you go through, write down each one of these in the buckets that you have, but pay close attention to whether that was a need, a want, or a savings.
I think let's clarify this a little deeper, because if I, as a millennial, I don't really look at my bank statements. What I think is important to call out for those of you who don't look at your bank statements, this is giving you your finances for the last month. So if you're not using a bank statement, but you're going on the online web page, you need to filter it to the last 30 days.
Right.
Because we're talking about a monthly budget.
Right.
And I could see some people saying, well, man, I'm way over, because they're not looking at day 1 to day 30 or 31 or 28 or 29 if it's a leap year. The point is, get a 1 month vantage point of your finances and then break them down and see where you're at. Hey,
because your budget 50, 30, 20 was based off of the income based on a month. Good clarification.
And I want to just say one thing here. When you do this, if you've never lived on a budget yet, it will not meet 50, 30, 20. Don't freak out yet. Don't freak out yet, because you are not living 50, 30, 20 when you do this for the first time.
Right. And in fact, if you're like almost 60%, you're upside down, and don't freak out. But actually, this will be an eye-opener, and I think you'll be shocked about when you tap your card and you get that cup of coffee, or you tap your card for that Frappuccino caramel-coated cup upside down, $8 cup of coffee as opposed to my 50-cent black coffee. It's gonna be eye-opening, but don't freak out.
Yeah.
It's really part of the process that you're going through. Now, you can either have at the end of this positive results where, hey, good job, you actually have got money left over and hopefully you're saving some money, or it's going to be, oh my goodness, you're spending more than you're bringing in. That's what you should experience at this, one of those two. It's not a bad thing, it's not a horrible thing. In fact, it's a good thing, because you're starting to recognize, wow, where am I spending my money? Am I thinking before I spend?
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I think you're right. When we did this early in our marriage, I was shocked at how much we were giving to eating out, getting coffee, and just like silly things that were definitely not necessities.
Yeah.
It was a really big number. Percentage-wise, it was huge.
You know, when we had to write checks and do that to pay our bills, you had at least 15 to 35 seconds while you're writing the check to think, wow, do I really need to spend this money?
And you had your checking register right there that you had to flip and say, is there even money to cover
Yep.
this check?
And the thing is, now they make it so easy to tap a card and walk away. So let me say this too, millennials, Gen Z, and some boomers, pay attention to how much you spend every month.
Yeah.
It's just too easy to say, well, I hope I can get this covered. If it doesn't, it won't go through. You should never be in a position to
Playing
do
a
that.
little point of purchase roulette, I see.
That's right. So now we're at step 6. And step 6 is the big thing. You've got your budget created. You've got your income. You got your 50% allocation, 30%, 20%. Now you've looked at where reality is, and now you need to adjust.
Yeah.
Adjust what your spending habits are. Like we said, don't freak out, but you can actually adjust the categories by spreading the spending in the appropriate bucket.
And this is where I've been wanting to get this entire time, because this is where either you look at it and you say, ooh, this is fun, I get to tweak it now, or this is where most people fall apart. They say, I know I need a budget, I need to set up a budget. They get through the first month and they're like, this is too much work, I can't figure it out. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, which is probably not good.
Right.
So adjusting is really important. And there's a couple of pieces. Let's start with the savings one and talk about this for a minute. The savings, calculating your savings budget, we talked about. Emergency fund, retirement account, college fund, and other big purchases you're saving for. There should be a hierarchy on these. For instance, if you have no money in savings and you have no emergency fund, that becomes the most important thing.
Right.
Because
Prioritization, savings.
Because what happens when you're trying to live with no debt and not tap the credit card, right? Debit card comes out of your checking account. Credit card, you have to pay for with interest. If you say, I'm going to try to stop using my credit card while I get my finances in order, and your car breaks down and you have to pay $500 for that, and you don't have it, your entire budget just got thrown out the window.
Right.
So saving for your emergency fund becomes an important piece. Before you save for retirement, before you have a college fund, before you save for any other big purchases, get an emergency fund. And Dave Ramsey has this actually built in 2 different places through the baby steps. The first is save $1,000 for your emergency fund.
Right.
And then several steps later, it comes back and he says 3 to 6 months. So first, get your emergency fund in order, then add in your retirement, college fund, and any other big purchases.
So cutting to the basics, how do you get your emergency fund built up? I'm gonna call y'all out, all y'all. Living in Texas, y'all is 1 or 2. If you have 3 or more people you're talking to, it's all y'all. So I'm going to talk to all y'all right now. How do you get money to increase your savings? Quit spending. Instant gratification is not your friend. You can't just say, oh, wow, I'm walking by a taco shop. I just ate lunch, but a taco sounds really good. I want it. Instant gratification, walk by the taco shop. That's one of my biggest problems, by the way.
Is walking past the taco shop?
I gotta try it. But that's what I'm talking about. Start spending less, a reduction in spending, and then give that money to your savings account for emergencies, and then prioritization of that. So prioritize your spending, prioritize your savings.
All right, so let's give another really good example. Go back to what we talked about earlier. I am doing this for the first time. I got to step 2, and it's supposed to be 50% of my income, and I'm currently spending 60 or 70%. What are some actionable ways for them, and I'm putting you on the spot here, but what are some actionable ways to get this in order the first couple months?
Okay, so if you have money and your must-haves is 60% and 50%, you're not going to say, well, Dan and Chase told me to only spend 50%. No, it is what it is. What that means is you only have 40% to allocate in your other two allocations, in spending and also in your want to have. Now, your biggest flexibility, I think, should be in your wants. I think that's where you start. So if you're spending 60% and you know you're going to have to spend 60% or you're going to have to move, I'd consider moving. I really would. But until that point, you got to reduce your spending, which would be in your, hey, I like to have that. If you have a plan on your cell phone that is the top notch, consider ratcheting that back.
And this is where it starts to get uncomfortable for people because they've become accustomed to a certain standard of living, but they haven't got they're living on a champagne budget with
paper plate,
frozen burrito, income. And so you've got to figure that out. And in some instances, if you're really upside down, you've got to make some big changes. And that could mean I'm going to go find a different place to live that's cheaper. It might be I'm going to go sell this brand new car that I'm making $500 to $1,000 payments on so I can get this right sized. Because the truth of the matter is you do not need $1,000 car payment, especially if you can't afford it. Yeah, right? you can't do it.
Or I'm going to discontinue eating out so much. Or and I like to eat out, right? I think everybody should have the opportunity to eat out, but it's getting so expensive. So instead of doing it, once a day, I'm going to do it on Friday nights only. And so you've got to curtail your spending on your want-to-haves in order to pay for your must-haves. But you can also take control of your own money, and you can move. You can sell your car, like you said. That's a like-to-have, not a must-have. So there's ways to do that. But I think the big thing here is adjust. Adjust to your... And it's going to be pretty telling, because if you are spending more than you're bringing in, now is the time to take control of your expenses and do it. A simple budget that we laid out how to do it. You can put money in envelopes and label them the same thing, but the concepts are all the same. Start to track and be mindful of your spending.
And then I think that the last piece as we kind of wrap up here is step 6 is not a one-time thing.
Right.
Step 6 is an every month adjust a little bit, because the piece that we didn't include here is debt repayment. And debt repayment is a 50% budget item. That you have to do that. That's a 50% should include your debt repayment. Right. And the goal is to pay off your debt as quickly as possible, because that frees up more money that will likely go into your fun eating out and your travel and your other things. So get the debt paid off quick. But what that means is you'll have to adjust. And for us, it took us probably 6 months of tweaking it every single month to get it to where it actually works the way it should work. And, there's some interesting things. We're way over time now, so we're not going to go into it, but maybe in the future we talk about how we've adjusted over the months personally, because I think that could be really helpful. And the way that we actually budget after it's set up. There's some really interesting things you can do. So I don't know. Anything else to add to this?
Just to do this, it's going to be uncomfortable, but it's a challenge, and everybody likes a good challenge. And I tell you, for the longevity of your mental stability and your enjoying life on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis, budgeting is important. Please reach out and do this, whether you're a millennial, boomer, Gen Z, whatever. It's a benefit, right? So.
And I will put out, I think we would be willing to help. If you have questions, if you have specific questions, comment down below or send us an email, partner@firstskined.com, and we will be more than happy to help or answer any questions that you might have. So feel free to utilize that if it could be helpful to you.
Yep. Make sure you budget coffee. That's always a good thing, because we love people that walk into a coffee bar. But there seems to be a disagreement between millennials and boomers. But just because it's different
doesn't mean it's wrong.
Have a great day.